Assembled Vaishnavas for very kindly inviting me and for your extraordinarily generous introduction, which I do not deserve, but I certainly appreciate, you make me feel somewhat worthy, although I'm not. But it is a very special day today. It's a super festival, not just a regular festival, a super festival. Why is it a super festival? Because we have Diwali and Govardhan Puja on the same day. Somehow, some dates they align. Very rarely that happens, but it does. From what I understand, our New York calendar, it is Diwali and Govardhan Puja today. So lots and lots of things going on, and it can be a little bewildering. Especially, I remember when I joined ISKCON and I was like, yeah, Diwali is so awesome. And then we have Govardhan Puja, this is so awesome. And what are the different pastimes should we be thinking about? What are we actually celebrating? And then, of course, you have all these different feasts and festivals going on and so many programs going on, everybody greeting each other. I mean, coming from Indian background, it's like everybody's calling each other from all over the world. And in our community, we wish each other happy New Year's, because in our Gujarati community, it's a New Year's Day today. So it's like a huge, it's overwhelming. We all dress up in our best clothes, we go visit each other's relatives and neighbors, and we exchange gifts. It's Christmas and Thanksgiving and fireworks and 4th of July all rolled into one for us, and it can get really overwhelming. And sometimes all this overwhelming festivity can actually derail our, at least for me, the focus on what is it that we are celebrating, because there's so many nice things to eat, and then we have to just manage the logistics of the festival, and of course, fireworks. That's a big deal. In fact, we did some fireworks over here. Apparently, it's legal now in New Jersey, so you can do all kinds of things with fireworks, and it was a lot of fun. But what is the point of it all? And so perhaps we can explore some of that. And it's perfect that today's verses actually point us in that direction, which is a great, wonderful coincidence. So with that, I will share my screen, and let's see if we can dive into these verses for this morning. All right, let's see. So 10:13:3. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 10, Chapter 13, text number 3, and we'll go up till text number 5. Shruno svavahito rajan api guhyam vadami te bruyu snigdasya shishyasya guravo guhyam apyuta. So we'll do translations and purports by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. This is Shukadev Goswami. He's continuing. This is the beginning of the chapter. And he says, O king, kindly hear me with great attention. Although the activities of the Supreme Lord are very confidential, no ordinary man being able to understand them, I shall speak about them to you. For spiritual masters explain to a submissive disciple even subject matters that are very confidential and difficult to understand. Text 4. Tatha gavadanan mrityo rakshitva vatsapalakan sarit pulinamaniya Bhagavanidam abravit. Then, after saving the boys and calves from the mouth of Aghasura, who was death personified, Lord Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, brought them all to the bank of the river and spoke the following words. Aho tiramyam pulinam vayasya swakeli sampan mridulacha balukam sputat sarogandhritali patrika Dvani pratidvana lasadrumakulam. My dear friends, just see how this riverbank is extremely beautiful because of its pleasing atmosphere. And just see how the blooming lotuses are attracting bees and birds by their aroma. The humming and chirping of the bees and birds is echoing throughout the beautiful trees in the forest. Also here, the sands are clean and soft. Therefore, this must be considered the best place for our sporting and pastimes. Purport: the description of Vrindavana forest, as given herewith, was spoken by Krishna 5,000 years ago. And the same condition prevailed during the time of the Vaishnava Acharyas, 300 or 400 years ago. Kujat kokila hamsa sarasa gana kirne mayurakule. Vrindavana forest is always filled with the chirping and cooing of birds like cuckoos, kokila, ducks, hamsa, and cranes, sarasa. And it is also full of peacocks, mayurakule. The same sounds and atmosphere still prevail in the area where our Krishna Balaram temple is situated. Everyone who visits this temple is pleased to hear the chirping of the birds as described here. Kujata kokila hamsa sarasa. So the purport ends here. Om Ajnana Timirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. I offer my humble obeisances unto the lotus feet of my spiritual master, who has opened my darkened eyes and filled my heart with transcendental knowledge. I further offer my obeisances to all of you assembled Vaishnavas and seek your kind blessings and permission that we may recite Srimad Bhagavatam. So I want to thank all of you once again on joining on this very special festive occasion of Govardhan Puja and of Deepavali. And of course, every day when Srimad Bhagavatam is opened and read is a day of festivity. Why? Because Krishna himself is basically festivity personified. He's a festival, walking, talking festival. Everything he does, everything he chooses to do, everything he chooses to even not do, everything about Krishna is a festival for the senses. Even apparently negative things like stealing and running away or being cowardly, devotees don't care. Everything Krishna does, because he's absolute, is always a festival. It's always wonderful. When he steals butter, he's celebrated as Makanachur. When he runs away from the battlefield, he's celebrated as Ranachodarai, the king who ran away. How wonderful, you know. Of course, for Kshatriya is worse than death, but for Krishna, it is a temple in honor of him running away from the battlefield, you see. So everything about Krishna, because he's the absolute truth, the more negative you go, the more positive it is, you know. Dancing with other men's wives in the middle of the night, wonderful, the highest. That is Krishna. He blows our mind away, and I've said it many times. And if he doesn't blow our mind, he's not God. That's one of the things about the Supreme Lord. So here we can see that Krishna is celebrated in this first verse that we read today as someone whose activities are very difficult to understand and they're very confidential. It is very difficult to understand Krishna for an ordinary person. It says for an ordinary person. Ordinary persons cannot understand Krishna. And when ordinary persons who cannot understand Krishna take a stab at trying to write about Krishna and talk about Krishna as if they know Krishna, they make a huge mess and they end up leading other people into the ditch of nescience. Therefore, any descriptions or interpretations or literatures written about Krishna by someone who is not a devotee of Krishna should be avoided like poison should be avoided. Even though the topic may be Krishna, or someone may be saying this is Krishna's words in Bhagavad Gita, and here is my explanation of it. If that person is not a surrendered devotee of the Lord, those words should be avoided, just like milk that has been sipped by a serpent, and the touch of that serpent's teeth into that milk poisons it. It looks like milk, but it's poison at that point. Therefore, the confidential and very difficult to understand activities of the Lord, although cannot be grasped by an ordinary person and certainly should not be taught by an ordinary person, are essential for those of us who are aiming to come closer to Krishna, are essential for us to understand by this method of Guravo Guhyamapi. Guravo means the spiritual masters. Right? It says, the spiritual masters explain to the submissive disciple even subject matters that are very confidential and difficult to understand. So, what are the things that we're celebrating today? Why are they difficult to understand? So, all month we have been celebrating this extremely beautiful pastime of Mother Yashoda. You can see the love in her eyes. You can see the monkeys looking on. And you can see the other gopis also watching. As Mother Yashoda is embracing Krishna and with an attempt to punish him. And she's tying him to this ukhal, the ukhal. Yashoda bhiyo lukhaladhavamanam. So we sing this Damodarashtakam prayers, and we can see that Mother Yashoda is binding Krishna. She had put down her stick because Krishna really got afraid. Supreme Personality of Godhead became really afraid of her when she came running behind him with the stick. And when she saw the extreme fear in his eyes, she put down the stick. But she didn't stop the punishment part. She had to tie him up, because he was really getting out of hand, breaking pots and whatnot, feeding it to the monkey. It's not easy making this butter and churning it and then turning that. It's not easy doing all this work. And I'm just going to break pots and feed them to the monkeys. This is not right, Krishna. So I'm going to have to tie you up. How is it that the Supreme Lord, who creates the cosmos simply by his breath, and trillions of universes come out of the pores of his divine skin and get created, and entire universes and galaxies are just manifest like that. And when he breathes in, everything gets wound up again. That same Lord, now he comes here on earth as a little boy, and he's being tied up by his mother. And he's afraid of his mother. So in that verse, Yashoda bhiyo lukkala, he's running away from ukkal out of fear, bhiyo. And then in the next verse it says, Rudantam muhur netra yugma mujantam, karam bhoja yugmena satanka netram. He's crying and he's rubbing his eyes. So he's crying to show his mother that, look, I'm afraid. And he's rubbing his eyes to show that, look, I'm crying. Don't miss out my tears. And so then, And his eyes, netra, are satanka. Satanka means they're terrified. He has so much fear in his eyes. That Supreme Lord from whom fear runs away. Swayam bhayam, bibheti swayam bhayam, that even fear itself is afraid of that Lord. Now that Lord here in this Leela is afraid to the extent of satanka. Now, there's different kinds of fear. And the highest kind of fear is atanka, terror. Atankavadi means one who's a terrorist. Satanka means one who, is full of terror. He's terrified that he's in such big trouble. He knows he's in trouble. In fact, he knew even from beginning, before he saw Mother Yashoda, because he was looking here and there while he was feeding the monkey. So he knew he was doing something wrong. And when he saw the stick coming down, that was really pushed him over the edge. So how are we to understand this extremely confidential pastime? First of all, he comes as a boy. Second, he's full of fear as Mother Yashoda is tying him up. Is this a fake fear? Is this something that, he just puts on a show to please his devotees? Or is it something that he genuinely feels? Is he actually trembling? Right? And the pearls right? Nantam muhur netra yugmam karam bhoj yugmena satanke netram. It says muhu shvasa kampa. You know that verse. Muhu shvasa kampa. This kampa is trembling. He is trembling with fear. Again and again, his breath is trembling. Of course, these are signs, and the pearls are trembling with him. So the Acharya explained that this is not just a show or a manifestation just to present to us that he's pretending to be a boy. No, he is the Supreme Lord. He is feeling this because he wants to feel it. He wants to taste these flavors of expression of love, expressions of being a person. All these feelings come from Krishna. He's not imitating us. Our feelings are sourced from his pastimes. His pastimes are the prototypes of all of existence, upon which we can also, everything is modeled in the material world after Krishna's spiritual original activities, his pastimes. So when he feels the fear, that is the original fear. When he gets upset, that's the original upset. When he's pleased, that is the original being pleased. Therefore, there's nothing more real than Krishna's fear. Even though, when we remember Krishna, all our fear goes away. So this is the transcendental nature of his pastime. It's very difficult to understand, but when we serve the Lord, we can understand gradually. Ordinary man cannot understand this. Now, another important point, Krishna is trembling, right? Muhu shvasa kampa. If you're familiar with another very famous verse in Bhagavatam, tatte anukampa sasumikshamano, that it's a prayer by Lord Brahma, that one who continues to suffer the reaction of his misdeeds while offering you obeisances and remaining your devotee and serving you fully surrendered, that person, and he waits for your mercy, anukampa, that person becomes eligible for freedom and liberation, and it becomes a rightful claim, sadaya bhag. In that verse, the word anukampa is there, and the same word is there, muhushvasa kampa, the trembling. So kampana means trembling. So that kampa is there, and Krishna's trembling of fear. And interestingly, that same word is there when Krishna shows his mercy in the form of anukampa. So what exactly does anukampa mean? Anukampa is a very special flavor, the highest, most intimate form of mercy, where Krishna actually trembles with you. He understands our feelings so much to the extent that he is not just sympathetic. He's not just sympathy, but he's empathetic. He feels our pain. He trembles with us. Anukampa means to tremble with somebody else. Can you imagine that degree of mercy that he brings his frequency to our frequency, even though, we have so much pettiness in us, but he understands our feeling to the point where he feels our feeling. And then from that space, he gives his mercy. And that special kind of mercy is called anukampa. That is the level of mercy that Krishna gives. To whom? To that person who continues to suffer and tolerate his misdeeds, past reactions, while offering hridvag vapurbhir, with the heart, with the body, and with the words, surrender to the Lord, namaste, obeisances to the Lord continually. So remember that verse, it says that Krishna's pastimes are very difficult to understand. They're very confidential. It is hard to understand this, but he does it. And then in the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna gives us the clue and the key on how we can also understand. So we'll explore that in just a second. What is the other pastime that we learned today that happened is Govardhan Puja, worship of the Govardhan hill. And then Krishna lifting the Govardhan hill. He does it very casually. And it's a very beautiful pastime. And what do we learn from this pastime? That Krishna always protects his devotees. He comes to the rescue of his devotees again and again. Sometimes it's very visible like this, and sometimes it may not be visible or may not be realized until much later. Sometimes we may feel in our own lives some setbacks have come, and some circumstances change very drastically, and they are not very comfortable circumstances. But then after a few years pass, and we look in hindsight, we realize that had it not been for that particular experience, we would not have made some progress in Krishna consciousness. We would not have had certain realizations about the world, and we would still be struggling, with our spiritual growth in certain areas. So whatever Krishna does for those who are surrendered, he takes a direct role in protecting them. And of course, the Vrajvasis are surrendered to the Lord, and this pastime is something we can keep in our hearts of the Lord protecting his devotees, and we can have faith that the Lord will always protect. In fact, having that strong faith that the Lord will protect, rakshashiti iti vishwaso, the vishwas, the trust, the faith that he will always protect, is one of the 6 limbs of surrender to the Lord. So this Govardhan pastime emphasizes that let us remember the Lord's hand in our lives in protecting us. That protection may appear differently, may come across different flavors. Sometimes he may protect us by taking away all our wealth. Sometimes he may, who knows what kind of protection that looks like. It doesn't look like protection right now, but the Lord's plan is deep. We are eternal. No one can destroy us. Krishna protects the trajectory of our devotional service and our devotional growth, while still maintaining the delicate balance of giving us our minute freedom. Our only job is to not misuse that freedom while Krishna is working on his plan to protect us. So let us meditate on this beautiful pastime of Govardhan lifting and think about this and see if we can increase a little bit more our vishwas, our trust in the Lord that he will protect, and maybe strengthen that one limb of surrender. So we talked about the sweet pastime, it's hard to understand, of Damodar Leela, which actually, by the way, happened today. We celebrated all month, but today is the day when it actually took place, which is why we focus on it. Queen Kunti had come to visit Vraj on this day of Deepavali, and she witnessed this pastime personally. And then she speaks about it later on in the first canto in her prayers. So she was quite mind blown herself, and she expresses it very beautifully. So it happened today. So today is the day when we really, light the lamp and offer to the Lord. And speaking of lamps, today's Deepavali, which is the festival of lamps, the festival of lights. And why do we light so many lamps? This is Lord Ram returning after defeating Ravana and rescuing Sita Devi, coming back to the kingdom of Ayodhya. And it's a very beautiful pastime. Now, Lord Ram came at night. It was like evening time. I mean, here it's shown as daytime, but it actually it was a night flight. And it's the flight. He came on Pushpak Viman. Pushpak Viman is this airplane, is this shaped like a swan. And they're landing, but it's a night landing. And so, if it's night flight and it's not a full moon, it's actually like a new moon. There's hardly any light in the sky. So Hanuman had come ahead and told Ayodhya Vasis that, hey, Lord Ram is coming. Lord Ram is coming. Let's prepare for him. And so they lit up a runway full of lamps because he's coming by flight. And so just lined the whole of Ayodhya with so many lamps. And so you could see it from the sky, and it's a very beautiful scene. And so based on that, they landed very beautifully, and it's just a gorgeous scene to see. So what do we take for us from this particular image? That let us light the lamps of welcome to the Lord into our hearts. Let us invite the Lord Ram, who comes into our hearts by lighting the lamp of knowledge, by making an effort to turn on those different lights of knowledge, the lamps of knowledge that are available to us, through the form of guru, through the form of association, through the form of study. And of course, all that understanding and knowledge can only be realized when we apply it with devotion. And which brings us now to the core of the Bhagavad Gita. The core of the Bhagavad Gita is these 4 verses. And I'll stop after this. Krishna says, I am the source of all spiritual material worlds. Everything emanates from me. Those who perfectly know this engage in my devotional service and worship me with all their hearts. So once you realize that the Lord is the master of everything that exists, everything comes from him, then we engage in serving him. And those who are great devotees, their minds are also absorbed in Krishna, and they're engaged in loving service again. And from that, they derive great satisfaction and bliss. And how? By conversing about me. That's what we're doing right now. This is a very classic process of being in touch with Krishna, is conversing about him. And then what happens to those who keep serving him with devotion? To those who are constantly devoted to serving me with love. Then Krishna gives the understanding by which we can come to him, right? This is the key. Dadami buddhi yogam tam. This confidential nature of his pastimes, the hard to understand nature of who he is and what he does, that becomes insignificant because Krishna gives the understanding. But to whom? Tesham satata yuktanam bhajatam priti purvakam. Those are constantly devoted, satata, and bhajatam priti, who are serving me with love. Those 2 things. Satata means all the time, and with love, priti. To those people, to those devotees, I give this buddhi yoga, by which they get. Otherwise, other people forget it. They're not going to get it. It has to be loving and it has to be constant. And then the final verse in this Chatur Shloki, he says, to show them special mercy, I, dwelling in their hearts, destroy with a shining lamp of knowledge the darkness born of ignorance. So at that point, by the mercy of the Lord only, can we be freed from ignorance? Do we know what to do? We also know clearly what not to do, how to do it, and to how to be happy and how to share this happiness with others. And so on this very special and festive occasion, let us meditate on how the Lord operates, how he is very difficult to understand, and at the same time, it's so sweet. But if we are constantly and affectionately serving him, then certainly we can rest assured that he will protect us and he'll give us the understanding by which to fathom what it is that he does, what it is that the Supreme Lord even is, and how much he actually loves us. And when he shows us mercy, he is so much in love with us that he feels our pain. He resonates with us. The level of intimacy the Lord shows us, we can't even imagine. I mean, he's sitting right next to us in our heart. No matter what kind of body we've taken, no matter how many sins we're committing, he never leaves. Why? Because his concern, care, and affection for us is everlasting. He never steps away from our heart, no matter how inimical we may become. And he's always looking for the day when we turn to him. And he's just looking for opportunities to destroy the ignorance in our hearts with a shining lamp of knowledge, if only we are to allow him. So with that, we'll stop here. Thank you very much. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.
Thank you, Madam Gopal Prabhu. What a wonderful class. So happy to have you with us on this festive occasion. Okay.
Thank you for inviting me. Haribol.
Yeah, great. Temple room, do we have a comment or a question for Madam Gopal Prabhu? We're supposed to ask the temple room first.
Hey, Hare Krishna, thank you, Prabhu. So nice to see you. We delight in the way that you relish sharing these pastimes. The first verse was about how Shukadev Goswami is explaining to Maharaj Parikshit, and it occurs to us that we're walking through these pages of the Bhagavatam, walking through these stories. Prabhupada's holding us by the hand, and that without that parental guidance, so to speak, they have movies like that. You can't go in there without a parent guiding you to explain this stuff to you, because you might misperceive it or go over your head. And so we're grateful that you're taking on that service. I remember that the Gurukul teachers, the Gurukul is like an ashram, protecting the young people from contamination and degrading influences. But then the teachers would take the students out into the city, into the contaminated atmosphere, but go with them. You know what I mean? So that they don't just keep them in the closet, but they take them out. And we're watching this one devotee who's been helping us with Krishna's Prasad distribution, and he's bringing his son, and amazing exchanges that they have. He's developed this a very special communication with the son. And I see that practically everything that they see, the father breaks it down and expands on it and gives perspective, spiritual perspective. How wonderful is Krishna. So we're grateful for Prabhupada's guidance. Krishna so wonderfully is giving us that. And for your guidance. Thank you very much. All glories to Prabhupada.
Hare Krishna. Thank you, Adi Purush Prabhu. Hare Krishna.
Again, I'd like to bring the congregation members out for Prasad distribution and bring their children.
Yeah.
Thank you.
A very powerful lesson.
Adipusha Prabhu, is there anyone else in the temple? I know
Yeah.
you're the temple room personified.
Arjun is here, Alan's here, and we have a visiting devotee here who helped with Prasad distribution yesterday. You have some comment? Nope.
No?
They're satisfied with your presentation.
Okay. William, what's your question?
Hare Krishna, Prabhu. Whoa. Let me just. Sorry about that. Hare Krishna, Prabhu. Thank you for this wonderful class. I have a question at the beginning. You had mentioned that Krishna is not easy to understand. It's very difficult to understand. I sometimes struggle understanding certain things that I question a lot of things. I mean, I question, I think, almost 80% of the things that I'm told. But how does a aspiring devotee, because I consider myself an aspiring devotee, how does one who's aspiring to be a devotee deal with devotees who say like, oh, no, that Swami, that you shouldn't listen to anything he said, you shouldn't even mention his name, you know. And I have books of that particular Swami, the Guru, Vaishnava. I have books at home of him, and I like them. I've read them. How can we deal with devotees who, because you said anything that's written by a non-devotee we should shun, but anything that's written by a devotee we should take to heart. I think that's what I heard. Right? So yeah, I have like Kirtanananda Swami, Bhaktivedanta, Bhaktipad. I have books of him, and I met him. I met him in person, and I was very moved by him. And I have his books. But certain devotees, you know, I'm not going to mention names. They tell me, no, don't even mention his name. Don't. You're gonna offend other devotees. How do we deal with that? How do we deal with those devotees?
Yes, thank you very much. That's a very good question, very deep question, and also very practical one because it affects us day to day. And it's a very challenging one because, okay, who is a devotee, who is not? You know, that's one question. And if someone is a devotee, to what degree should I get close to that person? To what degree should I imbibe their teachings? To what degree should I associate with that person? These are questions that come up all the time in the Sangha of devotees. Interestingly, Srila Rupa Goswami has given us this thing known as, this booklet known as Upadeshamrita. It's only 11 verses, but it is called the nectar of instruction. It's the essence, the Amrit is the essence of instructions that Vaishnavas can structure their spiritual life around. You know, the 6 things that are conducive to your Krishna consciousness. These are 6 things that are going to destroy your Krishna consciousness. These are 6 exchanges of love between devotees. They're all there in the first few verses. Then in that same book, Rupa Goswami, now this book is meant for all of us who are aspiring devotees. It's not meant for only the top class devotees who have passed through all these understandings. No, it's meant for all of us, which is why he explains it in such depth. He mentions in that book that we should learn to discriminate. Now, generally, the word discrimination means something very wrong. You're doing on the bodily platform, you're going to be racist, or it's not even legal. I mean, we had all these anti-discrimination things. So the word discrimination generally is associated with something negative, but we should discriminate in the sense that we should choose our association, and we should choose the level we want to engage with different devotees. How do we do that? What is the framework for that? Are there any guidelines? Everybody with a tilak is a devotee? No. In fact, Rupa Goswami mentions, you will come across 3 categories of devotees, he says. You'll come across 3 categories of devotees. One is known as the Kanishta, okay? The lowest category of devotee, who is still a devotee, by the way, but that devotee you should respect. But he says from a distance. Means you don't disrespect that person. Why? Because that person has chosen to turn to Krishna. In spite of whatever his background may be, in spite of his bad behaviors and all that, he or she has chosen to turn to Krishna and become a devotee. Maybe they've taken on the external markings of a devotee. Maybe they're doing a few days of seva. Maybe they're doing seva 24/7. But there are certain characteristics about their behavior that puts them in the category of Kanishta. And in particular, the core of it is how they relate with other devotees. If they only see the Lord in the temple, but they don't see the Lord in the heart of everybody, then that's reflected in their actions. That's reflected in how they treat each other, how nice or how not nice they are with each other, whether they are exploiting other people, whether they're exploiting different resources, whether they're being hurtful, whether they're being manipulative. All these things are there, but they're devotees. But that is Kanishta. Okay. Then the next one is Madhyama. Madhyama is one who really understands the philosophy very solidly and who lives by the principles very strongly. He or she knows how to treat devotees nicely with gentleness, and how to even treat other living entities, with seeing the Lord in their heart too, being an utmost gentle person, absolutely no sense of exploitation. Never is anybody feeling hurt by their interaction, the dealings. They don't break laws. They are not out to get somebody. They're not out for a position, this and that. That is Madhyama. And then the highest Uttama, whose only mission in life is how to share Krishna consciousness with others. They live the topmost level of clarity and integrity, and 24/7 all they're doing is how to share Krishna consciousness with others, and they do it very effectively. They're very powerful. They're empowered by the Lord on dint of their dedication. So how to interact with these 3? The Kanishta, you respect from a distance. Madhyama, you become friends with that person and try to get their good qualities. And Uttama, we try to serve that person, learn as much as possible. Even spending a moment with them is so valuable. So if we keep this attitude towards all 3 and we apply that framework, then all these detailed questions, is Kirtanananda, is this Swami, that Swami, what about these devotees who told me to not? We can use this framework to make our decisions. You see, then we sit back, put them in the framework. Am I really being objective in my classification of these particular devotees? Okay, the person who wrote this book, what is his background or her background? What are his pastimes? We have to really reflect on all these things. And sometimes, every sinner has a past, and every saint, every saint has a past, every sinner has a future. So even from that framework, we can make a decision ourselves, how much to respect, how much to absorb from one person. Prabhupada himself wrote about Kirtananda quite a bit. Kirtananda had his ups and downs in life too. So we can understand some of that history. We can make our own decision. Then if somebody is criticizing us or guiding us that you should or shouldn't listen, maybe we can be open to that, but see how much we can understand. All has to fall into this framework of how to interact with the devotees given by Rupa Goswami. So I would certainly encourage devotees to read that book And if you want to understand a lot more about that book, then I strongly recommend a commentary on that book, a very extensive commentary on Rupa Goswami's Upadeshamrita, written by none other than Bhakti Vinod Thakur. That commentary is known as Bhakti Aloka. If you find that book, you can find it online. You Google it, it's available, just download it. It's Bhakti Aloka, one word with a Y. Bhakti Aloka means the rising of the light of devotion. And it's basically, he takes apart the whole Upadeshamrita, and he gives lots of in-depth commentary on how to apply this framework in our lives. And it's quite fascinating. I think if you're really interested in how to deal with devotees, how to process and parse out different devotees' advice, recommendations as to who to avoid, who to read, so on, I would strongly urge you to dive into that. You will certainly benefit from it. I hope that helps.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna. Thank you so much, Prabhu. Thank you. The answer. Hare Krishna.
Thank you. Madana Gopala Prabhu, you so wonderfully described how on Diwali we celebrate Lord Ram's return along with Sita into Ayodhya, and in the same way Krishna is coming into our heart, and we're welcoming him with this little lamp. Does Radharani come back into our heart? Is she in the heart along with Krishna, or is that a deviation?
That's a good question. So Krishna, wherever Krishna is there, Radharani is there. There's no question of Krishna without Radha. It's like saying, can the sun come into existence, but there's no light and heat? There's no question, So yes, there's a question. What's the name of the commentary? It's called Bhakti Aloka. I'm just going to answer this question real quick. Okay. So, yes, remember, Radharani is the energy of the Lord. There's no question of Krishna without Hare. We have to call Hare Krishna. I don't say Krishna Hare. First Hare, you see. Right? No one greets you, Krishna Hare, Prabhu. No, Hare Krishna. Radharani comes first. Wherever Krishna is there, Radharani is there. Wherever Narayan is there, Lakshmi is there. She sits on his chest. So the form of the Lord in our heart is Paramatma, who's Vishnu. And Vishnu can never be without Lakshmi on the chest. Who is Lakshmi? Lakshmi Devi, the expansion of Radharani. So yes, that goes without saying. Sometimes Radharani is visible, manifest, but sometimes not. Like certain temples, they'll rather go in the temple, or certain, some temples, it'll be called Radha go in the temple, but there's no Radharani deity there. But it's assumed. You see, so maybe the deity may not be visible, but she's there. So there's no question about it. And ultimately, we approach Srimati Radharani. Srimati Radharani is the one who is mercy personified, and she's the one we approach. When we approach Krishna, we can't approach him without her. Therefore, Hare first, then yes.
Interesting. Wow. Krishna is blowing my mind again and again every morning. He's God. I like that point. Prabhu. Beautiful. Okay, any other questions, dear devotees, online audience? Bhima Prabhu, you have anything to say in glorification of Krishna?
Haribol, I have everything. Excuse me, I was running up the side of a mountain. I said to myself, am I going to go to the mountain today? And then Madam Gopala said, today's Govardhan Puj. And I said, what better thing to do than to run up the side of the mountain and realize that Krishna lifted such a thing over our heads so that we can always take shelter, so we can always be in firm faith that Krishna will give us shelter, notwithstanding storms, but we will have shelter. I also wanted to ask Prabhu, love it when you give class. I'm sorry, I'm breathing so hard. I wanted to ask, you said Krishna's Leela, Krishna's pastimes are the prototype of our existence or our experience? I just want it, because I'm writing it down. The wrong word is like the difference between lightning and a lightning bug. Mm-hmm. So Krishna's Leela pastimes are the prototypes. That means they came first. His fear of his mother came before our fear of anything. So is it of our experience? What exactly were the words you used?
Yes, yes. So everything comes from Krishna, including feelings, including flavors of exchange, including expressions. So it's the form and the experience both. All forms that we perceive in this world are fashioned after their origin in the spiritual realm. Similarly, all experiences in this world are fashioned after the prototypes in the spiritual realm. So that's what we understand. We even see this in the Bhagavad Gita in the 15th chapter, where Krishna says, he gives an analogy of the tree, right? There's an original tree and then there's a reflected tree in the water. And so we're a perverted reflection. We've heard that many times of the original source. So yes, everything, including things like anger, greed, all those feelings also come from the Lord. And Prabhupada talks about this a bit.
So this idea that Krishna is difficult to understand is actually can be turned over on its head, because as I said, what is the difficulty that we have a reflection of everything that Krishna is here in this world? We have a reflection. We have this prototype here in our world. So is Krishna easy to understand? What did Prabhupada say? Simple for the simple and complicated for the complicated. Could you elaborate on that? We often say Krishna is so difficult to understand, but then again, it sounds like the accessibility is right there.
Yes, yes. The difficulty lies in our conditioning. To overcome the conditioning is where the difficulty is, which is why is recommended that one who's conditioned materially should not make assertions about his understanding of God and his interpretations of God's teachings. That is the difficulty, you see. So when we're materially conditioned, then we cannot fathom Krishna. Second, no amount of brain power can be sufficient in and of itself to understand Krishna. And the classic example is Lord Brahma. We have this one brain. Lord Brahma has four. He has the four heads, but still he misunderstood. And he thought he's an ordinary boy. We have this one processor. Krishna Brahma has a quad core processor, four cores. He couldn't figure it out. He was completely, and he's a supreme engineer of the universe. So that whole pastime was enacted to highlight this one point, that it's not brain power that makes it possible to understand Krishna, but the mercy of the spiritual master, the mercy of the Lord. And of course, our material conditioning is what makes it difficult. And it's hard to, what's hard about it is this mountain of nescience that's coming in between us and Krishna. That's all. Otherwise, once you have crossed the mountain and you're living on a platform of genuine humility, and you've let go of the ego and you've surrendered to Krishna, then, like he says, I give them the understanding by which they can come to me. I destroy the ignorance with the shining lamp of knowledge. In the Bhagavad Gita, he makes that point. But we overcome it with constant and loving service. Thank you, Prabhu.
Thank you. Yeah, I really like that point. It has to be constant and it has to be loving. Very nicely put.
Yeah.
Madana Gopala Prabhu.
And constant, by the way, sometimes people think, okay, Prabhupada said we have to be 24/7 Krishna conscious. And we said, this is just impossible. I still have to sleep for at least a few hours. So maybe best I can do is 18 or something, 16 hours. 24/7 is not possible. And so, that standard is very high. But constant has also been translated as daily. So if you do daily, then you're constant, regular. Constant can mean regular too. And when you do enough times daily with enough sincerity, then the love blossoms in the heart. And then you're spontaneously connecting everything with Krishna. Like Prabhuji is connecting, the mountain is climbing with Krishna's pastime. So this kind of connection start happening for one who is absorbed in Krishna. And when you become absorbed enough, then even when we're sleeping, we're always thinking of Krishna. We see that in normal life too. If you've seen a mother with a child baby, and even in the middle of the night, the mother will be like, oh, my dear mother, where is he? she's sleeping. She's literally just snoring, but her hand goes to make sure that a mother of child is there, and she touches, and then in the middle of her sleep, she's so much affectionate to the child. She says the name, and then morning she won't even realize she said the name because she was sleeping. So, but it's possible to be 24/7 affectionate to your child. Same way, 24/7 affectionate to Krishna. All right, Hare Krishna.
Yeah, if we just immerse ourselves enough in bhakti, we'll become like Madana Gopala Prabhu one day.
Hare Krishna. I hope not. I am not. It's a very low bar. Thank you for inviting me. Hare Krishna.
Thank you. And how do we say, do we say Diwali or Deepawali? What's the right way?
Deepavali is the proper one. Diwali is the more common, shortened version. It's really Deepavali is the proper Sanskrit word. Diwali was the more recent version of it. But a lot of people may not get that, especially in the common language. So, we can use both. But Deepavali is the more correct, more original one.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
What's happening in the temple room, dear devotees? Are we staying for darshan? It's 8:07, 8:08.
Group push first.
Oh,
No,
group push.
darshan.
Okay. All right. So
Later.
then that's it. I have to run, dear devotees. Thank you very much. Okay. Ross. Hare Krishna, Ross. Happy to see you. All right. Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Madana Gopala Prabhu ki jai. Happy Deepavali. Happy Govardhan Puja. Jamuna Jai has given us a big smile. Hare Krishna, Jamuna Jaya. Are you running up the hill?
Well.
Yeah. All right. Hare